All right, we are not live. We are pre-recorded. So if you are trying to hop in the chat with us and attack us for our takes tonight, you cannot. I'm Brian Ford here with Josh Walker. This is Dynasty Saturday Night 5, Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast for the Going for Two Live Network. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, review, follow, all that on the audio. And if you're here on the YouTube, please make sure you subscribe, like, comment, turn on notifications and feed the algorithm monster what it must be fed. Josh, how are you doing today?
A little bit of mixed emotions today. Thursday was opening day for baseball, so that was fun. But at the same time, every single baseball team I have has about 5 people that are already hurt. So it's fine. It happens. It's early in the year, but still, it's. I always expect to have my full team rocking. Next thing you know, I'm picking up people off the waiver wire at the second day of the season. So, but that is
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I'm ready for the NFL draft too. This is my favorite time of year. Really, weather's getting good. Baseball's on. Football is getting ramped back up, and we'll have plenty to talk about until the season starts and get back active in trades. Which actually just made a trade. Uh, Traded Jalen Hurts for Justin Jefferson.
Oh, I saw
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I got Jefferson. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that
that's
was
my first share. Very happy about that.
nice. All right.
Yep.
Um, uh, I think it's one of those things where there's a little bit of bad vibes on Hurts. There's a little bit of bad vibes on JJF because we don't know the quarterback, and it's kind of all evens out. And me and a quarterback in a super flex, I always want to squeeze people, but yeah, no, it's pretty. It's two guys who are worth multiple firsts. So
Yeah, yeah, and that team, my best receiver is Drake London. I have like 5 running backs in the top 20, so I got 3 first round picks, 2 seconds. I can grab a quarterback or two of those, so it'll be
right
fine.
on. All right, so tonight we're gonna have a little bit of fun again. We're in that time between the combine and the draft where we're back to those circular conversations that we were having in January and February. Because we got nothing to talk about until some new information comes. And so last week Troy was on, and we discussed some of Troy's sleepers. And tonight we're going to be just having some fun with some my guys, just making a case about why we like a certain player. It may not be that what we think that person's going to be elite or a first round pick or fantasy gold, but just somebody who I don't know. How were you defining my guy tonight, Josh?
Um, Most of them were at cost. What I can get based on other people that are going where I think these people should go. That's most of it. One of them, I'm sure it's no shock to anyone. It's someone I've liked since the draft started. He's been getting a little poo pooed on. But I think that's going to correct itself. But it's mostly cost, guys. When I'm looking at the rookie draft, what I can get, say, in the second round, early third, as opposed to reaching on someone earlier. That's I don't think is going to be as good. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, pretty much the same as far as like it's not somebody who is like way up there on the draft board, but is going to present some kind of value. Also, just something about the player I like, the way that player plays, or a certain fit they might have, or a certain reason to root for them because they're just fun to watch or something like that. Everybody's got kind of my guys, the guy players that just kind of hit different for you. You may not think they're better than certain players, but just like you like to watch them and stuff, and that's kind of where I'm at. Kind of where I'm at with this. But before we get started with the lists of 5, let's talk about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has it all with the best ball, pick'ems, DFS, other sports besides football. They're gonna put rookies and sophomores back on after they fix the thingy. Uh, every major sports there. There's plenty of ways to spend money and have fun on Underdog. If you go to underdog.com or the Underdog app and you use the promo code GF2, if you are a new account making your first deposit, Josh Norris of Underdog himself will match up to $100 of that deposit. So if you deposit $2, Josh Norris will give you 2. If you deposit 101 or higher, he'll still only give you 100. But hey, it's a free $100. Take it. Go to underdog.com, go to the Underdog app, use promo code GF2. Start playing, start winning. If you're watching here on screen, obviously we have the QR code for you. You scan that and go there. Get in some of those big board. That might be closing soon, because people are hopping on that. They'll have some other iteration of some pre-draft degen stuff. they'll have. I think they're going to put up some big board super flags. So then once the rookies are in there, it's gonna. So yeah, just go. Scratch that itch instead of getting in a startup. Go draft a couple underdog leagues, and that's all we got. So we do lists of 5 here on Dynasty Saturday Night 5. In case you don't know, just kind of the way that we use to talk about the topic we want to talk about today. Again, we're having some gosh darn fun, and I don't know how actionable some of this stuff is. We're certainly going to be making the case about why these my guys are someone to look for at cost and at value. But you know what? Sometimes, you're just having fun in fantasy football. And what are you going to do? Watch this stupid college basketball? No, you're not. So here you are, and let's do it. Josh, kick us off with your first my guy.
Yeah. I'm just going to go and get this one out of the way. It's the guy I've been clamoring about. He was my RB1. I have him down to RB3 now, which I think is a pretty good spot to have him. It's Audric Estime. I'm going to keep this short because I've talked about him almost every episode we've done. But at his pro day, I think it is worth noting. I've seen some people say a 4.5, like late 4.5s, early 4.6. But either way, that's a significant jump from his 4.7. And really, Brian sent me this video, and he might be able to expand on it more because I've only watched it once, maybe twice. It's from the PFF guys, one of their podcasters who builds models. They figured out the secret to running back, and it's not what I was expecting. It's hand size. 3 things really: hand size, consensus board, and draft capital. Those 3 things are the biggest tells as to who's going to be successful in the NFL. And they were saying Audric Estime is in the 98th percentile for hand size. He's pretty high on the consensus board. So draft capital will mean a lot. But some of the guys they mentioned in this same model were Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, some other guys who have been absolutely fantasy studs. So that's encouraging. And they also noted on there that he had practically the same game speed as, I might pronounce this wrong, the running back from Louisville, Guarendo, who ran a 4.3 at the combine and is jumping up a lot of people's boards. So that's just another – I've made this point multiple times throughout this draft season. Game speed's way more important to me than someone who can line up and run a 40. So I think the game speed's there. He's elite at breaking tackles. He's really shifty for his size. And I think he's going to, depending on where he lands, obviously that's going to mean a lot. But I think he's going to be a really good option, especially early 3rd, maybe late 2nd, depending on where he gets drafted. But I've been able to get him in the 3rd round, so that's a lock for me.
Yeah. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson, shout out to the PFF NFL podcast. They do a great job. They've been having a lot of fun with the draft these days. They have really good chemistry and sort of back and forth, and they dive deep, and I like those thoughtful deep dives on things. So yeah, they basically just took what are the 3 or 4 data points that are the most correlative to success, defining success by PFF WAR, and wouldn't you know it, hand size is one of them. It's weird, but yeah. But I think the better point, I'm just gonna say better point, but the one that really I think speaks to this argument about straight line speed and stuff is they have this athletic score, gas game athletic score that they've been testing out, and and some of the stuff is like an athletic score, obviously from the name. Also, what Steve will do is give you like the average of the top 5 miles per hour speeds that a guy hit with the GPS. And some people end up faster and slower than you think. And so you have to kind of marry these two and evaluate the player holistically. And Estime, by all counts, starts to look better when we look at him this way. Curious, where do you have him these days as far as like among your running backs or among your overall super flex or something like that?
I should have my rankings up. I know I have him as RB3, and I have him going mid-2nd, but because I'm fairly certain most people don't have him there, I feel comfortable if I have an early 3rd getting him there, because 2 other guys I want to talk about, I'd much rather take a wide receiver in the 2nd, and then if Estime's in the 3rd, take him there just for value purposes. So in the draft, I have him mid-2nd. I have him as my RB3, and I think he's around 20-ish for overall.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, no surprise. I'm a little lower on him still, but like my tier of running backs is still 1 through 8, and it's still just two really small buckets of like a soft tier break. And it's just I'm just kind of holding them there until we figure out draft capital and stuff. So
Yeah.
will not be surprised if Estime ends up like my number 3 or my number 9, or we'll see. So the first guy I want to talk about, speaking of running backs who are maybe not super fast, let's go with Ray Davis. So Ray Davis is an interesting story. I had him on a few C2C teams over the last couple of years, and yes, he's going to be 25 in November, and that's not great, especially for a running back. But the NFL really is only looking for 2 good years out of a running back on their rookie. I mean, their rookie contract at max, 4 years and then get out of here. So I don't think it's going to knock him all that much, especially like once a few of these younger guys go off the board, and then it's like he's now being compared to some other younger guys who are roughly equivalent in talent and explosiveness and things like that. I might as well just take it anyway. Beyond the age knocks and things like that, the story of Ray Davis is one that I want to root for. So not only is he an underrated back as far as what he can do on the field, but his personal story is interesting. So I'll give you the nutshell version. He's experienced homelessness for most of his youth. Shelters, foster system. And two people became his legal guardian temporarily to get him into like this school to do like this program, and he played some football, and then he couldn't leave the state, and then but at that time his father, who had been experiencing incarceration, was kind of putting things together and was able to then be his guardian to get him to the school in upstate New York, where he then played high school football. He's transferred twice. He's transferred up each time. He started at Temple, then went to Vanderbilt, then went to Kentucky, ran for 1,000 yards at all 3 schools. This guy has always had to bet on himself and has always had to be there for himself. At one point, he had to make a decision where the 2 younger siblings would have to live with the godmother, and he had to stay behind because the godmother didn't have enough resources for all 3 of them, and he was already older. So he's like, I'll stay behind. This is a guy that you want to root for. I want to see Ray Davis first of all, I just want to see him, get drafted, right? Obviously this, dream come true, right? I think we kind of lose sight of this sometimes. We're looking at some of these guys who are, in their 20s with like, their career ahead of them and full of dreams. And we're sitting here saying, well, I don't know, he's not really shifty enough, and it's like, like it's for our little pixels in our sleeper app, but it's a real good human interest story, as much as that phrase gets thrown around a little too much. But if you're wondering about him on the field, he's actually pretty good. I mean, he's more likely going to be a power back between the tackles, but he is competent and adequate at pass pro and receiving. He doesn't have like top end speed, top end, elusiveness, but there's like enough there. I think he's going 3rd round and later in rookie draft mocks. And if there's a guy to take a swing on late, who you want to root for all sorts of reasons, who, has every bit of chance to be better than probably like, I don't know, a guy like Braylon Allen, it's Raymond, aka Ray Davis.
I like it. Because I moved him actually. Well, I didn't move him up. I moved Braylon Allen down. I have Ray Davis at 9, so I agree with you. I have him right behind Will Shipley. Where do you have him ranked?
Yeah, I have him at 9.
Mexico.
I have him at 9 as well. Yeah. I have Allen in my 8 and then Shipley below him, but yeah, he's right he's the top of that next tier, because it's like, I know the age, people are going to kind of knock him a little bit. So it depends on, is he completely off certain NFL teams' draft boards? So I got him parked there for now. And then it's like, we'll see what happens with the draft.
No, I like that. I like that call. I don't really have anything to push back on, but I think there is something to say about guys who overcome stuff like that at a young age. There's just a certain maturity to where you don't think they're going to get into certain off the field issues. It seems like this is more important to them than, clout or like being famous or popular. It's like he just wants to make money, probably help his family. So I think there is something to look into that. And that definitely, I think teams will see that and be more, if they're unsure about someone on the field, they'll take the guy that has those traits more so than someone who doesn't.
Intangibles matter to the NFL.
Yeah.
And if it matters to the NFL, then it has to matter to us because that's going to determine draft capital and whether they rely on a guy and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. I'm going to jump into a receiver who I was higher on before the combine, and I think people are finally catching up to this. It's Florida Gator Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah.
Really like him. I didn't expect him to test as good as he did at the combine. I was expecting it to be one of those guys who his game film and game speed looks better than regular speed and vertical and all that stuff. But he showed out at the combine, had a really good performance. And I think what he'll be able to do in the NFL, it's kind of unique, is he'll be able to test nickel corners and linebackers from the slot because he's so good at tracking passes and has elite athleticism with his vertical, his hands. I think having a deep slot threat is going to be very helpful, especially if you have a solid tight end who can run underneath. And I think it just opens up each level of the field, opens up the outside for the receivers as well. And if he needs to, he could go and play outside. So it's not like he's just penciled into a slot position. I think he's a good enough route runner and good enough at separating to run every spot on the field. And I think he has some of the best hands in the class. I know we all saw that gif of him catching that one-handed pass like Odell did, but that's just – he can do that every game. He's really good at, like I said earlier, tracking deep balls and going up and making contested catches. And I think in the slot against a linebacker or a lesser nickel cornerback, I think he could really expose some defenses and have some pretty good production. So Ricky Pearsall, I'm going to take him into the middle to end of the second round, most drafts, and be happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of these, why'd the guy stay for 5 years kind of thing. But when you piece everything together and you look at what he can do, he's one of these guys who, for me, it's going to be, and I'll get to this a little later with a guy I want to talk about, like my mantra of in today's NFL, quote unquote, and this is the guy, right? When you're faced with, okay, do I roll the dice on one of these like bigger outside guys who are in the mold of the big draft misses that we've been having lately, like a Keon Coleman or an Adonai Mitchell or guys like, or a fifth year, Mingo vibes, Xavier Legette, or do you go for Pearsall? And for me, it's easily Pearsall. I have him as my wide receiver 9. He's in a tier of 6 to 11, and I actually have him above Keon Coleman and Adonai Mitchell. So I'm comfortable taking him in the. You probably don't have to until the late second, so I'm probably comfortable there. Yeah.
No, I agree. I have him 10th as far as wide receivers go.
Oh, actually, I have him 8th. I put him above Roman. I forgot about that. Yeah, I like. You know what put him above Roman? That new tattoo that he's got, that half sleeve that says "Bet on me." There you go. That's another reason. Another reason to root for him. Yeah. That's a my guy for sure. Yeah. He 3 years at Arizona State, and then 2 years at Florida. So one thing to remember about this class with the transfers and all that is it's gonna happen. It's gonna be more common, COVID and NIL and all that. And if you look at, well, why did he stay 5 years and the production and all that? He was playing at Arizona State with the Arizona State version of Jaden Daniels. Then he was playing with Anthony Richardson, who, I love Anthony Richardson, but we all know that in college, his accuracy was still under development, let's say, under construction, right? And then this past year, Graham Mertz, the Wisconsin transfer, who, he's pretty good, had an okay year, but he's not, an elite quarterback. And so, when you were a wide receiver and you want to put stuff on tape and you want to put numbers up, you kind of got to squeeze as much as you can out of things. And maybe he just said, I don't have enough, on my resume yet after the year 3 or 4 to really make it work and it be lucrative. And, because now people are talking about him as a day 2 NFL pick, right? Which was not true, maybe even before the Senior Bowl, right? So.
Yeah.
All right. So, you know what? I'm just going to go down, and I just did my running back 9, Ray Davis. I'm just going to go 10 and 11. So 10 is Kamani Vidal. So it's not Vidal like Vidal Sassoon. It's Vi. It's got a long I. So, I heard that from the player. So it's Vidal. And he's from Troy. So the small schoolness is going to, probably bump his draft capital down. But but very productive at Troy. And so when you see these guys who are very productive at these small schools, you wonder, okay, well, can they hang, with the big boys? And he, I think, did okay when it comes to that, showing that he's that kind of athlete like the big boys are when he was at the combine. So he ended up with a, let's see, a 4.4640, a 1.53 split, 107.7 weight adjusted speed score. You want over 100. 8.89 RAS isn't bad. He is surprisingly, I think, for some people, good at pass pro and picking up blitzes and receiving for a guy who's 5'8". And we thought he was 5'8" and like 220. But he ended up 213, so he's not that complete bowling ball size. He's more of like a typical NFL size. He's more like Blake Corum size, and I think he's gonna be a powerful runner. I think he's gonna again be more of a between the tackles guy, but he's the guy who, because he's good enough at pass pro and catching already, not elite, but good enough already, he's going to make a roster, and he's going to maybe even have, a third down role to begin with, right? And then we'll see, if we go from there. And plus, it's a small school, right? So it's an underdog, story, which I seem to love, so you want to see a guy like that do well. He impressed at the Senior Bowl, again, kind of increasing his draft stock, and then increased it again at the combine. Listen, I don't know with these running backs this year. This guy could go mid-third round. This guy could go early sixth round. I just don't know with the running backs this year. But if he gets to a spot where it looks like he can get some playing time and get some touches, I think he's a guy who can surprise people. I think he's well-rounded. I think he's more athletic than people think. I think there are things to like about Kamani Vidal. And so, yeah, let's do it. Kamani Vidal. See, I said it wrong again. Another tough little bowling ball-ish running back.
Yeah, I like him, and he has, I think, what you're looking for. Each year in college, everything was trending in the right direction, trending up: touches, yards, touchdowns, reception yards. So it just seems like he got better as he had more playing time, and not everyone has that, especially at running back. So that's good. No, go ahead.
I will say this, that being that he's at a small school, I would want some of the peripherals like missed tackles forced per attempt, rushing yards over expected per attempt, and yards after contact per attempt. I would want those to be higher. He didn't really hit those thresholds, and coming out of a small school, that's a bit of a worry, because if you're that much better than that competition, you should be better at that, and you should have more than 5.2 yards a carry. But again, it's also a marriage of what do you see on tape and what do you think he can project to, and what kind of intangibles does he have?
Yeah, and I know it's a smaller school, but the Sun Belt's shouldn't be completely slept on. There's some pretty good schools, pretty good players on some of those teams, and Troy's had some pretty good NFL players. They take football pretty seriously in Southern Alabama, I've learned. So I like it. I don't hate that he came from Troy. If anything, it just makes me like him a little more.
Surprisingly enough, Troy University's team name is the Trojans.
Yeah, it shouldn't be anything else, honestly. All right, I'm gonna go and jump to a tight end here, and this is one of the ones that's all about cost. It's Theo Johnson. Yeah, like I said, it comes down to cost. I'd much rather have him or Sunat, who I know you're going to talk about, over Sanders, where they're going in drafts. And honestly, Sanders has fallen out of the second round in a lot of the mocks I've done lately. But even then, I think I'd still rather have Sunat or Theo Johnson. And I like Theo Johnson because he had really good athleticism in the combine for the tight end position. And the main reason I would take that into importance is I think that's the way the position's trending. You got Bowers, you got all these other tight ends who they're looking to do maybe like Kyle Pitts. Like, yeah, they want him to block, but they're also, I think, looking for someone who's better in space and can make some plays, line up at big slot sometimes. And I think he's going to be perfect for that. He's really big, so it's not just like he's a smaller tight end that's fast. He's 6'4", 260 pounds, and ran a really good 40, had really good explosiveness. And I don't know what his draft capital is going to be. I don't really know much about that, but I think once he gets in there and gets some playing time, I think he's going to return really good value for a 4th-round draft pick. Where I haven't seen him go in the 3rd yet. Him and Sanat have been pretty much 4th rounds. If I've even seen Theo Johnson not get drafted in some mocks I do. So I think there it doesn't hurt to take a shot at him, and I think his upside's higher than Sanders, and same with Sanat. So
yeah, Theo's one of those guys where we say, this is why RAS and things like that matter a lot for tight ends because of the uneven or sometimes even completely non-existent usage of tight ends in college. And Penn State is guilty of that as well. But they're also guilty of producing some guys who test through the roof when it comes to this stuff. And so you just kind of have to say, okay, we saw some stuff on tape. We saw some flashes of, I think he had like 30 catches one year or something like that. Senior Bowl, he looked good against other, Power 5 guys who are in his draft capital range. So you got to like that. You got to like the size. And oh, by the way, I just wrote my article about Jalen Wright for goingfor2.com. His 10-yard split of 1.55, Jalen Wright was the same as Theo Johnson's split at the 40 of 1.55. So this guy can fire off the line pretty well. And so, you just kind of have to say project a little bit and say, yeah, he gets in the right spot. Maybe starts as the, maybe tight end 2 and then works his way up or something like that. Yeah, it's and as you said, as we're saying this entire show, at cost, let's go for it. Yeah.
But also, tight ends can be a slow burn too. So I'm not expecting him to come out and give me tight end, top 20 tight end first year. This is more of like, let him get in, let him get some experience. And by year 2 or 3, he'll be a pretty solid player.
Yeah. I probably should go to Sanat now, but I'm just going to keep going with my running backs. I did number 9. I did number 10. I'm going to go with my running back 11. The other Davis, Isaiah Davis, from South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits. Kind of similar to the last two in the sense that he's, got that sort of stocky compact because he's 6 foot, but he's 6 foot 218. So he's got, that typical NFL size. He's versatile. He's well-rounded. He does enough good, to not be a liability with pass pro and receiving. I think he's a surprisingly good route runner. I think he has surprisingly good hands for, especially coming from South Dakota State. Again, one of those guys where it's like you got to prove it with the big boys. He proved it with the big boys at the Senior Bowl week, and I'm trying to. I think his RAS was in the 8s or 9s. Let me see here. Isaiah Davis, 100.0 as far as the weight adjusted speed score. You like that? 8.34 on the RAS. You like that? 4.57 40 is good enough, I mean, it's what Estime ran at his pro day, So, again, a guy who in the 3rd round, 4th round could give you, as much as some of the bigger names that are going to go earlier could give you if this guy ends up in the right spot. Plus, he's super humble and polite. When I see him in interviews, that means a lot to me. You want to root for a kid like this who stayed at South Dakota State to win another championship and say, you know what, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to put more, dominant yardage up on tape, and I'm going to, make the NFL, notice me. Does well at the Senior Bowl. So again, just one of these, one of these stories that you want to root for coming from the small school, who could give you, touches at value. Is he going to be, through the roof? No. Is he a sleeper in the sense that he's going to outperform his draft value? Sure, yeah. And he's a my guy. That's what this show is, right? He's a my guy. I kind of identified him early as a my guy, and I'm rolling with it. I love I love the guys that come out of South Dakota State. Tucker Kraft. I just gotta love it. Yeah.
No, it seems like they're kind of onto something there because they've had some pretty good players come out of there lately. I like it. I actually have him ahead of Vidal on mine. Let me see. I have him at 10, right behind Blake Watt, or at 13, right behind Blake Watson at 12. So I agree with you. Like you said, I don't think he's going to be like a top 3 or 4 RB, maybe even 5 in this class. But where you're getting him in like the 4th round, maybe late 3rd, I think it's definitely worth it. And you'll definitely get some value from that, which is all you're looking for in those rounds, really. All right, I'm gonna save my best one for last. I'm gonna jump to a quarterback here. I'm going to jump to Michael Pratt. I was very impressed with Michael Pratt at the pro day. He didn't do 40, which I don't really give a shit about when it comes to quarterbacks. But his throwing drills, he looked really good. He looked on time, accurate, and he has really good quick arm action. And the main reason I like him is because I think he's one of the more prepared players in this draft class to instantly jump into the NFL and be able to contribute to a team, be able to make an impact. Because a lot of these guys, Jaden Daniels, even Caleb Williams, McCarthy, they all have some flaws where there's some question marks where you want to see what they got. And I don't think Pratt really has any huge holes in his game, but I also don't think has the ceiling some of these other guys do.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he has a better career than Nix, Penix, and even maybe McCarthy, depending on where he goes and the situation he's thrown into. Just because I think he'll probably start off as a backup somewhere, but I think once he gets playing time, I don't think it'll be long before he finds his way onto the field, whether it be injury, going to a team who likes what he has. I don't know, fourth rounds where I'm getting him in every single mock draft. Yeah. He's locked in for me in the fourth round pretty much. So it doesn't hurt to try there. Quarterback position's been really bad with injuries and backups who are just not good. Let me be clear. They're good because they're in the NFL, but for fantasy purposes against the defenses, they're not good. So I think he's someone who can instantly come in and be able to contribute. I just don't know if that will happen, but I think he could.
This is a guy when we were DMing, who are my guys were going to be, where I was like, fuck, I forgot to claim Pratt. and where we realized, like, we pretty much have a lot of agreement in this class. And I apologize to the audience who wants to see us fight, but we agree on a lot of players in this class. Probably the deeper in the ranks you go, maybe we wouldn't, but Pratt's a guy we like. I've liked him probably since last year. Shout out Christian Williams from Debbie Royale. Put him on my radar. Tulane, for those of you who don't know. I agree with Josh. If the NFL season were to start tomorrow and I needed one rookie quarterback to competently manage a game and win it, it would be Michael Pratt. Now, that, don't get me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying he's the number one quarterback prospect. I think he's a high floor but low ceiling guy. There's a couple knocks on him. Some stuff in 2023, especially after the injury, didn't look good as it did in 2022. Also in 2022, he had Tajay Spears and he didn't have. So also hand size for whatever, you're going to count that for is small for a quarterback. But this is what I've been telling people. And if people are probably sick of hearing it, including you, I can see a world in which, Penix, Nix, Rattler have played themselves into, permanent journeyman status, even third stringers or burnt out of the league or something like that. And there's Michael Pratt, just one of our high priority backups in fantasy, who's going to get a chance to spot start in both the NFL and our dynasty rosters, and is just consistently whatever, like dynasty quarterback 26 to 34 like every year, and just kind of just be in that level, and you're getting that in the fourth round. Definitely a guy I like. I don't want to say, because there's never a next anybody, but if you're looking for a guy who's got a clipboard future ahead of him, who could be the guy who then becomes, the starter in the right system, like a Brock Purdy, I think it's a guy like Michael Pratt or even Austin Reed later on in the draft.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And it's kind of weird how some quarterbacks go. Some like Josh Rosen, even Zach Wilson come in hot and then they just fizzle out really quickly. When other guys like Geno Smith, he got some playing time early and then he was just basically a backup till he got a shot. And now he's the top 20 quarterback. So you got to be patient with some of these guys, especially ones who are going to stay in the league like him. Because I could see where like Bo Nix and some of these other guys end up like Rosen, who are third strings, like you said, or just not even on a team anymore.
Yeah, the hit rate on some of these, first round NFL quarterbacks, when you look back, is actually surprisingly low. And so the NFL has a quarterback evaluation and development problem, and I think that's pretty clear. I think it's self-evident. I think they're over thirsty for quarterbacks. They overdraft them. They don't, and then they throw them in too quickly, and don't season them and sit them enough. There needs to be more Jordan Loves in the NFL, and it's just not happening. you have to figure out a way. Like, listen, I'm not a big fan of Bucky Brooks. Sorry, Bucky, I know you're watching. But the way that he put it on a show was like, listen, you got, say, 32 starting quarterbacks, right? And let's say 10% of any group of anybody, any profession, 10% of them are the elite, right? So maybe in a year at most you have like 5 elite quarterbacks. Well, okay, you're the other 27 teams. What do you do? Do you force, the quarterback thing, or do you say, I can win with a this level quarterback and build around him? And I think maybe some teams are going to have to start doing that. And, Pratt, I think, is kind of like the perfect guy for that. I'm not saying that's going to happen to him this year. I don't think the NFL is going to wake up soon enough for that. But I think it's a guy who could end up there at some point. Yeah.
I think one thing that's encouraging for that to happen is Brock Purdy, because I have seen some Brock Purdy comps to Michael Pratt, and I think Michael Pratt even has better arm talent than Brock Purdy. But I think the time's coming where teams are going to shift to where they search for intangibles and who has a good head on their shoulders that can actually read what's going on, as opposed to this flashy guy who can throw it 75 yards down the field on a run, but can't make multiple reads, can't hit the open receiver on a crossing route. I think that's one reason why people like Brock Purdy, and I hope the NFL shifts to that, where they stop trying to chase after just complete arm talent and the sexy picks and just go for the safer guys that they know will do what needs to be done on the field, not do too much, and build around.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that lately, and I'm wondering, one of the ways that these teams fought back against these defenses was the rushing quarterbacks, and then obviously for fantasy, we had this big aha moment of the advantage that these rushing quarterbacks give, and not even like running quarterbacks, but like quarterbacks who will give enough rushing yards and rushing TDs to pad the rest of their stats and give you that floor, right? Like, I'm wondering if with the proliferation of the Shanahan, McVay, Kevin O'Connell type, offenses, who like the Purdys and the Pratts and the Kirk Cousinses more, if the rushing quarterbacks are gonna be more of an advantage for us in fantasy because there's going to be fewer of them desired by the NFL, or if the proliferation of the other type of quarterback is going to mean that that's also the type of quarterback that we're going to want in fantasy because that's the one the NFL wants. I think it's more about like this year moving forward. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, we're going to fade Jalen Hurts because the NFL likes the incoming Brock Purdy's. But I wonder about that.
Yeah, and I was just kind of thinking, I was like, I'd be very happy if the Falcons drafted Pratt later on in the draft and let him sit behind Kirk Cousins for a few seasons and just have a really solid backup. I'd be happy with that.
There you go, Atlanta. You heard it. Let's draft Michael Pratt.
Terry Fontenot, give me a call. I'll come work with you.
I mean, Tulane, not too far away from Georgia. Yeah. All right, so let's see. I did my 3 running backs. I guess it's time to do Ben Sinnott, tight end, Kansas State. This is another guy who bet on himself and said, I'm going to walk on Kansas State and be a force. And he was a big part of the offense in 2022 and 2023. Here's how I see Sinnott, right? Let's take Bowers off the table for now. I think Sinnott does enough of what Ja'Tavion Sanders does, broadly speaking, in the athletics department, right? As far as a pass catcher after the catch, route runner, overall athleticism, but also is a better inline blocker than Sanders, although not elite of a block, not the best blocking tight end in the class. He does that well enough where I'm willing to put him actually number 2 among my fantasy tight ends, above Ja'Tavion Sanders at 3 and Theo Johnson at 4. Although, to be fair, in the same tier, he's versatile, he's tough, he's fun to watch. I think he does just enough things, just well enough. Like I said, he's tough after the catch. A couple things to think about. Actually, the biggest thing to think about is how the NFL wants to use him. He can be lined up as a fullback, and if a team with a wants drafts him with that in mind, where it's going to be more of a fullback, H back, move him around, kind of, and not really make him a tight end, then his fantasy relevance for us becomes less. But otherwise, Sanat is a guy to keep your eye on. I mean, just obviously, this is pre NFL draft. I've got him. I've got him ranked 23rd overall, which I think is high for a tight end. But so that'll probably change. But anyway, even if it drops a little bit, you're getting them in mocks now at like the late third at most. And if not after that, fourth and fifth round. So when it comes to my guy and a guy I want to root for and a guy that's fun, and a guy who is under the radar relative to the top two tight end names, give me Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. Yeah.
No, I love it. I have Theo Johnson and Sinnott over Sanders, like you said, like you do in the same tier. But I'm just completely out on Sanders now, and I think if Sinnott's used, like you said, in the fullback role on an H-back, I just think it's kind of a waste of his talent because I do think there's a lot there. Because some of his explosive stats at the combine were just as good as Theo Johnson's, and as far as short bursts, not the 10 split, but some of the other ones I was looking at are pretty close. So he's also one of the more athletic guys.
Yeah, I should have told folks that I think his RAS was in the 9s, right?
Yeah,
and pretty good. 4.68 40 for a tight end is pretty good. But one thing about the whole blocking thing, I have said in the past, and I still believe that route participation matters more than snap percentage, right? Like, I don't care if you're out there just to block, right? And if you have 80% snap share, but you're only running, I don't know, 60% of the routes, but there's a guy who has, 60% snap share, but is running, you know what I mean? Like, is running more of the routes. Then for fantasy, I care about the guy who has a higher route participation, but if you can block, you're more likely going to be on the field in close, like in the red zone and stuff like that, where you can use a formation and it looks like you might be blocking on that play, but then you go out and run a route and you're a red zone. You're now an end zone target, and you're catching balls that way. So there is something to be said for being able to block in line better than Sanders, and so yeah.
No, I agree with you once again. All right, I'm going to jump to my last player. And this is the one I think is the craziest value in the draft, and I think people are just completely sleeping on him. And also people on Twitter are looking for this year's Puka or this year's Tank Dell. And I think this will be the closest, and I'm not saying they're the same player, they have the same skill sets, but this is someone who I've seen go in the 4th round of rookie drafts, and his stats just do not equal that. It's Malik Washington, transferred out of Northwestern, so a lot of people knock his production, but once he transferred, like last year, he was second in PFF grade, in between Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison. He was first in receptions in all of college football. His reception percentage was 80%. That was second. 1,400 yards was fourth. And the main thing I like about him is he had 710 yards after catch, and that was first in all of college football. And he had 35 forced missed tackles. I've seen a lot of people say Malachi Corley's this draft's Debo Samuel. I've seen some other guys, Jacob Cowing, small, hoping that'd work. But I mean, this guy put his money where his mouth is, and he's going in the 4th round in some rookie drafts, and I just don't think. I think that's crazy to me. I think I have him ranked 9th overall in wide receivers. I have him one above Pearsall, but I'm not going to draft him till the 3rd. I'll probably take shots on him in the 3rd since I'll be taking Pratt a lot in the 4th. But I mean, 3rd round to get someone who has that type of production at a school that's not typically known for having a good offense like that, I think is amazing. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's going to get better draft capital than people think. And he did really good at the combine too. He has really good hands, really good after the catch. And I think he's perfect for the way the NFL is trending with wide receivers.
Yeah. I like him, and I know a lot of the folks who lean on the data, will not. They'll see the 5th year breakout essentially, or at least 5-year player with late breakout, depending on how you define it, and say, no way, I don't want it. He really only did it for one season at such a high level. There's these other guys who have done it from more. And I just, there's it's hard to quantify this, which I think is why it's hard to make an argument maybe until the data catches up. But there needs to be uh, context now with COVID, with NIL, with the transfer portal, where these guys are free agents and stuff like that. There's going to be things like this. We can't hold against Malik Washington that he was trapped on the Northwestern offense with Northwestern quarterback play, where he still was leading that offense, right?
Yep.
When he got to better competition, even though it was just the ACC, he still showed out, and I mean personally, I have him at 13. It's a little lower because I'm not sure what kind of capital he's going to get. I have him bunched up with these guys where it's like, I may believe in him more than I believe in like Corley or Leggett, but to me they're in a bucket of big question marks, and if they're used correctly, can hit and hit well. And I think Malik is one of those guys. After the catch, he is a monster. I don't want to get in his way. I don't want to get in any of these guys' way. Obviously,
No.
me. I mean, look at this.
I
But
would get crushed.
he's like 5'8", 5'9", and like 194, like almost 200 pounds. Like he's like a running back. He's built like a running back. Like I really like Malik Washington.
Yeah, and I think even having him 13 is well above consensus because it wasn't drafts I was in. In the ones I'm in, I take him in the third, so I don't really see where he goes. But I've seen screenshots of people getting him in like the fourth round. And I guess that's a testament to the depth of this wide receiver class, but there's a lot more question marks going before him, like Xavier Leggett, Malachi Corley, some of these other guys. And I'll just wait and take Malik Washington and be very happy. So
for sure, absolutely. I mean, and depending on like let's say Keon Coleman somehow sneaks into the late first, right? People are gonna go, he's gonna shoot up, right? Like you can have him at that cost. I'll take Malik W at late third, So yeah,
absolutely. I have Keon Coleman a little higher, and that's just because I do think a team's going to take a shot on him. There's always a team that overshoots for a wide receiver like they did Quentin Johnson. So I think it's going to happen.
I think what people don't understand sometimes is like people like you and I, when we do our rookie rankings, this is not a talent evaluation. This is not like we watch Saturday football and, are thinking about these guys as the way that they played in college. We take what they did there, right? And then we sprinkle in expected draft capital, how it translates to the NFL and usage, how that's going to translate into fantasy points and how you're going to win. What will the cost be in a rookie draft and that sort of thing. So I'll have a guy like, say, Keon Coleman, who I may not believe in. Or, you know what, let's not even compare Keon Coleman and Malik Washington because, a lot of Debbie and college people probably do have Keon above Malik Washington. But I'll take a guy and have him a little higher in the ranks, just kind of recognizing that like he's going to get the draft capital that this other guy I like better won't, but I like that other guy at cost, right? So.
No, exactly. And that's why I still have Coleman ahead of him technically, but it's just because I think he could get first round draft capital, and that is important. So
yeah. All right, my last guy, surprise, is Ladd McConkey. I know he's gotten a lot of buzz. I know some people are sick of hearing about him. I know everybody out there read my article about him. But, he's another guy with a backstory and a journey that is easy to root for. He was really barely getting looked at as a prospect. Wasn't even in the top 100 high school players in Georgia on those like recruiting boards or whatever. Was almost going to play for Chattanooga, I think, before Georgia out of nowhere kind of offered him a full ride. And it was kind of last minute. I think they something about I think it was one of those things where they had somebody decommit, so they had a scholarship open. Anyway, so he comes there having played quarterback and defensive back and kick returner and punt returner and stuff in high school. And the coaches just kind of believed in him and said, we'll find a way. And yes, there are warts to his profile. If you're a person who, looks at some of this stuff, you're going to see the production. You're going to see that he's a 4-year player. You're going to ask where were the stats? And you may not like that I say he was dinged up with some injuries and he was on a run heavy offense and he was on a team with, the the likes of, Brock Bowers that he's competing with for targets and that sort of thing. But obviously, he showed out at the Senior Bowl. People have seen the hype. I think he's mostly going to be in the slot in the NFL. I think he can win outside in certain matchups, in certain games against certain DBs. You can put him out at flanker and have a little better luck than you might against others. He's a guy that I want to root for. But I think also on top of that, he's been a flag plant for me early on as far as this, like, we have to think about the way the NFL is played now when we're evaluating these guys for fantasy, right? Yes, as Matt Wallman says, speed is still the cleavage of the NFL. So, you'll see them go gaga over guys like Brian Thomas Jr. and Adonai Mitchell. But who's missing? Who are the misses that we have recently? It's those types of guys. Who are the guys who are surprisingly hitting in a PPR format in today's NFL? In the short and intermediate with the short area quickness and that type of game. It's the Ladd McConkey types, and he's faster than people think too. I think he's going to be used in different roles, and just I think he's going to eat. I think he's going to produce, and he's wide receiver 6 for me. I've got him ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. I've got him ahead of Adonai Mitchell. I got him ahead of Keon Coleman. It's kind of like a backstory plus like a flag plant kind of thing. And I think Ladd is going to be a guy that I'm going to want to put now. All that said, we've been talking about at cost, and he's kind of starting to creep up there at the at cost part, so which is why I kind of hesitated to put him on there. I thought maybe he was ranked too highly for this, but there was enough my guy-ness there to fold him in. I mean, I have him ranked like 11th overall or something in Superflex. I won't have to probably take him in the late first, but he's not going to probably get past the mid second at this point.
No.
Now, and if he goes somewhere like the friggin' Chiefs or something like that, then he's going to be priced to the point where I'm not going to have as many shares of him as I think I will now. But yeah, Ladd's a my guy.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's kind of funny looking at people like discounting his college production, but then you go look at Puka Nakua's college numbers. His highest yards total was like 800 and something yards, like low 800s. McConkey's is high 700s. So I think college production is iffy. I think at the right situations, it can be used, but I also think people use it too much to just shit on a player that doesn't deserve the hate that he gets. And honestly, I was expecting him to run like a 4.4, maybe even 4.5, and he came out and ran really fast. And I shot him up my boards in. And my favorite thing about him, I lived in Athens for the past 6 years, so I got to watch a lot of the games. They were always on. Anywhere I went, it was on. And while he didn't have too many games where he had 9 receptions for 150 yards, 3 touchdowns, every single big play where they needed a first down, it was a big third down, big part of the game, they threw it to him. He was wide open, and he always caught the ball. So I think he's going to be, with the right quarterback and system, he's going to be a quarterback's best friend. I'm not saying it just because they're both white, but kind of like Adam Thielen was. Like, he made his thing on third downs, knowing where the quarterback wants him to be, being there, making the catch, and always making the right play. So yeah, I like Ladd McConkey.
If you want a little bit more of a deep dive for those listening, go read my article on goingfor2.com. A shameless self-promotion. I link to a bunch of stuff that kind of unpacks the parts about his, profile that are, like there's this weird, anyway, I linked to a thing where JJ Zachariason talks about like every guy who's had this stat is always low on this except for him. Anyway, so it's a really good dive into the case for and against Ladd, and I think I'm leaning on the case for. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Again, I think this is the first. Like, if you guys want to watch us argue, go back and listen to us talk about Jalen Hurts, Swift, ETN back in the day. There'll still be plenty more coming up, but this rookie class just isn't it.
Yeah. So, a couple honorable mentions. Xavier Worthy's been my guy. He's been my wide receiver from the beginning, before 4.21 40. He is more than just speed. He's more than just a deep threat. But like I figured he was kind of ranked too high to be a my guy, and with breaking the record at the 40, he's not really like a sleeper. But I want to tell you another honorable mention. That's the Dallin Holker story. So he's a tight end at Colorado State, and depending on who you talk to, either that production is fake because they use the tight end so much and he's not really gonna whatever. And some people are like, he's sleeper, blah blah. I like him. You know, I got him like, tight end 7 or something like that, and certainly willing to take a shot on him in 4th or 5th round, or post rookie draft waivers or that kind of thing. But here's a story I want to tell you. So Colorado State found out he was trespassing, right? He was hopping the fence to go into the facilities to have his wife, who was a Colorado State track star, pump balls into the jugs machine so he could practice catches and improve his hands. Plus, he's got long hair that's flowing and a beard, and he looks like Thor from the movies, and he's just so sexy. Yeah. So that's the Dallin Holker story. He wants it so bad. He's got wifey throwing balls in the jugs. By the way, that story was courtesy of NFL Stock Exchange, another PFF podcast on the draft with Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers. They do a really good job on that one. So check that out.
After you sent me that little clip, I think I'm gonna have to start checking that show out more because it seems right up my alley. So,
all right, well, that'll do it for us with our My Guys. I was going to, add a little bit to the intro from, no man today can ever take me away from my guy. But if I put that on there, YouTube flags the copyright stuff, and Jeff can't monetize the video, so you're gonna have to put up with my bad singing. Maybe on the audio version when we upload it to the podcast feed, I'll stick it on the end. Please subscribe, rate, and review on that audio feed here on the YouTube and video feed. Subscribe, like, comment, turn on notifications, feed the algorithm monster what it must be fed. Goingfor2.com for all your fantasy football needs. We have a Discord, little purple thing in the bottom right when you go to goingfor2.com. Hella channels. It's free. Lots of stuff on there. Our show has a channel. People talk trades, debate things, fun stuff. Josh, where can people find you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Rotonaut. It's ROTONAUT for the audio listeners. I just published a few updatings on my rankings as we were doing this. You can find all that at goingfor2.com. I have rookie rankings and dynasty. That's at goingfor2.com. Find us in the Discord, like Brian said. Right now I'm just shit talking Mets fans and Phillies fans on Twitter. The Mets are already in a beef with the Brewers. They already almost got in a little fight. The guy they almost got in a fight with hit like a 3-run home run off of them today. It was after getting booed. It was really funny. The Mets just can't stop stumbling over their own feet.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I got out of that nightmare.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at FFJunkie. Articles and rankings on goingfor2.com. I've been churning out some rookie profiles. Drake May is coming up next. Going to finalize that this weekend or Monday, and that'll be out this week. You can find me at the Dynasty Fever podcast, midweeks audio only at Dynasty Fever Pod on Twitter. It's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Go Braves.